Homesteaders, gardeners, and cooks. My name is Jennifer. Welcome to Miles Away Farm, or welcome back. Today we are making a rhubarb shortcake. So you've heard of strawberry shortcake, of course. And I don't know about you guys, I grew up with strawberry shortcake that was made with the shortcake recipe that was on the back of the Bisquick box. And so in my mind, a shortcake should be biscuity and flaky and not soft and spongy. And so I think there's kind of two different camps on that, but that's what I grew up with. And so that's what I always think of when I think of shortbread. And I got this idea. I had made some rhubarb syrup, and you'll see the recipe for that if you look at my channel. I just recently made some rhubarb syrup, and then left over from that was the sliced rhubarb that had been soaked in all of the sugar, and so it was really sweet. And so I just threw it in a pot, put a little bit of water in there, and cooked it up for maybe 10 minutes. And if you've ever cooked rhubarb, it breaks down quite quickly and becomes kind of this saucy, yummy deliciousness. And so I had this rhubarb sauce, and normally I would just kind of stir that into yogurt or put it on some cereal, lovely over ice cream. But I started thinking about strawberry shortcake and decided that we would do a rhubarb shortcake instead. And so that's what this recipe is going to show you. And the shortbread recipe comes from America's Test Kitchen, and it caught my eye because it was a brown sugar shortbread recipe. And I love brown sugar. I love that caramel note in there. And it just sounded like something a little bit different from traditional shortbread recipes that I had made in the past. And so this is a brown sugar shortbread recipe, and it was quite delicious. And I am going to keep the recipe for future use because it was definitely a keeper. I cut this recipe in half because it's just my husband and I. And so this is the video that you'll see is a half-sized recipe, but the posted recipe in the description is for the full-sized recipe. The one thing that was hard to divide was it called for one large egg, and so I just ended up using a small egg instead of a large egg and called it good. But yeah, rhubarb shortcake, really delicious, and a great just moving into summer, kind of the last hurrah for the rhubarb time of year. Let's get started.
So this is just all-purpose flour, and then I'm adding in the brown sugar, and then there's some salt and some baking powder that also goes into this that isn't shown. And then I'm cutting in cold butter into this. And I tell you guys, if there is one reason to get a food processor, this is like my favorite use for a food processor. This is a Cuisinart 14 cup food processor, and I really hate hand cutting the butter into flour. And I've tried those pastry cutters, and they do not work well for me. They make me crazy. So this is like my favorite all-time use for a food processor. This is sour cream, so it's going to have a little bit of a tang. There's our small egg, and that gets mixed together. And then that just gets poured into our flour mixture. And the key to getting a nice biscuity texture on these is to not overmix. And so I'm trying really hard here to just bring everything together. And there's a reason I'm doing this by hand and not doing it in the food processor. The food processor would overprocess it. And so I'm just trying to get everything mixed and damp so that it will hold together. Giving it a little bit of a toss because there's a little bit of dry flour still in the bottom here. And then just kind of a really quick mash down and roll over knead, maybe 3 or 4 times. Again, just to bring that dough together. It should still be a little bit dry, a little bit crumbly. You do not want to overmix this or you're going to end up with a tough biscuit dough. So there's our dough. And I'm going to cook this in my toaster oven so that I don't have to get my big oven hot. And again, this is half of a normal recipe. Usually this makes 6, and I'm making 3. And so I just kind of winged it here. You're supposed to roll it and cut it out, and I always find that incredibly fiddly. And so I treated this more like you would a scone. And so I just patted it together and then divided it into thirds. And all the details of this recipe will be, as always, in the description. I spread those out just a little bit so that they're not sticking together. And then into the toaster oven. And I think this was probably 425. It was still preheating when I threw them in here. Check the details below. And then in 25 minutes or so, I have beautiful brown shortcakes. And And then once these have cooled off a little bit, I am just going to split them in half and smear them with our gorgeous rhubarb sauce. Look at the color on that. This particular batch of rhubarb had a lot of red in it, so this is just so pretty. And we went fairly light on this just because they're pretty sweet, but do whatever your heart tells you. And then I didn't have any whipped cream, and so this is cream cheese mixed with a little bit of sugar, just to give it a little bit of a creamy bit to it. And there you have it. That's all there is to it. Really delicious recipe, you guys. Well worth trying. Rhubarb shortcake. Who knew? Thanks for watching, Tribe. If you like this kind of content, give me a thumbs up, subscribe, leave me a comment, and share. I have new content coming out every week.